But I want to read this part from the story we just broke. Soon after state departmental timelines were allegedly falsified, this is from Governor Snyder's top officials, were basically fudging timelines of what happened during the Flint water crisis that departments made. So the health department, environmental department, they created timelines, and Snyder's top officials basically just put in false shit. Soon after, state departmental timelines were allegedly falsified, and around the same time that Snyder's questionable internal Flint water investigations were underway, Snyder administration officials voiced concern about pressure they were receiving to improperly withhold Flint water documents they felt should have been released to the public in response to significant volume of freedom of information requests, The Intercept learned. So, in a nutshell, you have a water crisis, people are sick, people are getting, rashes, hair loss, children getting sick. You have people dying of Legionnaire's disease. So, a lot of groups, a lot of organizations put in freedom of information requests. They want the emails, communications between Snyder, his top officials, the health department, the environmental department, to know who knew what when. Who knew what when. So, reading further here, if after releasing his own personal emails, which news outlets noted were largely unrelated to the water crisis and heavily redacted, Snyder told Congress that, quote, relevant documents from different state agencies would be released so that the public could have an, quote, open, honest assessment of what happened. So if you live in Michigan, you know, and if you don't live in Michigan, you should know, in the state of Michigan, the governor's office is not subject to freedom of information requests. So let me repeat, in Michigan, Snyder, Whitmer, they're not part of freedom of information requests. So you cannot issue freedom of information requests for the governor and anybody in his office communications in Michigan. That is still the case under the Democratic governor, Gretchen Whitmer. Gee, I wonder why people get poisoned by water and there's never justice. This analyst, in a nutshell, she and others had to go through all these Flint emails to determine which one should be released as part of the FOIA request and which one should not. She emailed her supervisor expressing serious concerns about the process for releasing Flint documents, emails obtained by The Intercept show. Schuler wrote her supervisor that during a meeting about the Flint water emails, she and other analysts were tasked with going through to evaluate which emails should be released. The employee leading the meeting told Schuler and other analysts they, quote, would not be held responsible if the documents ended up being missorted. Again, if you kind of, wrongly decide certain emails should be kept back, shouldn't be made public, we got your back. So let me make this crystal clear. She was basically being told to fudge things if there's particular emails that might criminally implicate the governor, his top officials. If you don't release them, we got your back. Okay? And then she said, okay, great. Put it in writing. Yeah, no. And the lawyer walked away as I pushed back. This is, by the way, Snyder's administration. I'm going to explain why it's now seems to be feeding into the Whitmer administration. Ultimately, Schuler said she was uncomfortable working on the FOIA project, Freedom of Information Act project, and asked to be excused, a request that was granted. Quote, if she determined an email was clearly not Flint related, but it was Flint related, she wasn't going to be held responsible for that. A former official with the Department of Technology, Management, and Budget told The Intercept. In 2013, Baird and other Snyder officials used their private emails to communicate about a secret for-profit school model the Snyder administration planned on launching, ominously called Skunk Works. The move was par for the course for Baird, according to the former official with the Department of Technology, Management, and Budget, who alleged the governor's right-hand man once chided them for sending an email about Flint to his official Michigan government email. Quote, don't ever email me there. Always email me on my Hotmail account. Baird allegedly told the former DTMB official on a call soon after the official emailed his government email. Quote, he never replied to the email. I think he was mad that I mentioned Flint in an email. The alleged command by Baird, again, governor's top advisor, considered in Michigan his henchman, the alleged command by Baird was in sync with his overall aversion to leaving a paper trail. Quote, trust me, amigo, emails are fodder for our enemies' cannons. Baird wrote to the ex-Flint emergency manager, Darnell Early, on March 13, 2015, in a text message that we obtained. Suggest you default to the phone call or got a minute, drop by approach. I learned this the hard way. I mean, this is literally cartoonish. Trust me, amigo, emails are fodders for our enemies' cannons. So, Jordan, you might be asking, okay, we get it. Snyder was evil. His administration was evil. They were pressuring officials to hold back emails that should have been released to the public. We have no idea if all the emails that should have been released to the public have been released. You got a current criminal investigation going on that, frankly, to me, is horrendous based on the reporting I've done. They have basically tanked the investigation. They have not charged people that should have been charged based on our reporting. They have charged Governor Snyder with a misdemeanor when the original investigation was ready to charge him with misconduct in office and was building a case towards involuntary manslaughter. But moving on, well, how does this bleed into the current Democratic governor that we know, the media has painted as some type of, heroine because she fought Trump on COVID and other things? Well, if you got this, Colin, memo, Whitmer staff reviews FOIA requests even though she's exempt from the law. Whitmer's staff reviews FOIA requests even though she's exempt from the law. Governor Gretchen Whitmer is not subject to the Michigan Freedom of Information Act, which is scandalous in itself. And if you live in Michigan, you should stop paying your taxes, frankly, until you get government transparency all the way up to the top. But an internal memo shows her legal team is asking to review any communications from her office before they are released to the public by state departments that must follow the law. So in plain English, she's exempt. So her emails, her other staff's emails in her office are exempt. That doesn't mean their communications with officials from the health department, from the environmental department, from name your department that are not exempt from FOIA. Their communications with those people that are under the FOIA laws, those are supposed to be fair game. But Whitmer is basically saying to these departments, don't respond to FOIA requests without running it by our lawyers, meaning FOIA requests where there's communication with the governor and an outside agency, or the governor's top officials and an outside agency. Whitmer's spokesperson called the policy, get this, a good government approach to increase efficiency. Boy, is that a neoliberal pretzel twisting if I've ever heard one. And officials from the past administration said governor's offices typically expected advance warnings before any sensitive disclosures. A leading open government advocate called the Whitmer memo, quote, problematic, however, because the review could further slow public record requests. And a conservative activist called Whitmer hypocritical, given her 2018 campaign promises to boost transparency in her office. In a memo first issued in July 2019 and revised in April, Whitmer's chief legal counsel, Mark Totten, directed department and agency directors to notify the governor's team when certain, quote, legal actions or developments arise, including pending public records disclosures involving Whitmer or staff. Quote, please provide the language of the actual request and a copy of all documents that include, quote, executive office communications, the memo states. So again, no different at all than Snyder. We have governors, their officials, deciding what the public should have access to and what the public shouldn't. So I don't know if you're the governor, if you're the governor's top officials, if there were certain emails that the media might pick up, your opponents might pick up, might give you some legal problems, I might tell the health department, the environmental department, whichever department outside of the governor's office that is subject to freedom of information requests, I might tell them not to release it or release it heavily redacted or just delay. How is this at all a democratic system? Snyder did it, and now Whitmer's doing it. And by the way, I'd like to see Whitmer's communications on Flint. I'd like to see her communications on the fact that she already knew our report that Snyder's administration manipulated the water testing data. She said it in an interview. She acknowledged the manipulated testing that we broke. I'd like to see her communications on the attorney general dropping all the charges and then charging Snyder with a misdemeanor. I'd like to see her communications, frankly, and her top officials with Snyder administration officials. I'm working on something behind the scenes, but apparently they were pretty chummy, Snyder and Whitmer's people, to the point where Snyder and his people worked behind the scenes to get her elected. Gee, Snyder's people work to get her elected. She gets elected. A misdemeanor against Snyder.